Hello, and welcome to the final webinar in our Get Into the Groove Back to School webinar series with Slidesgo. My name is Elisa, and I am here today with Claudia Corrales, an art director at Slidesgo. I am super pleased at everything that we've been able to share over the last 3 webinars. The last one, we had Melody Munch visiting. Check that out in our YouTube carousel if you get the chance. And the webinar brought to us by Carmen, who's also here on this call, and the first one by Claudia. Claudia's back. If I'm understanding correctly, Claudia, you are going to do that magic thing where you fix slides in front of our eyes again?
Yep.
It's
by the end of the webinar, we will be fixing some stuff.
It's so satisfying to watch. So I'm excited for that. My name is Elisa. I am your moderator for this call. I'm your community manager in the Slidesgo educator community. Find this recording there. And that's it from me. Claudia, who are you?
Cool. Thank you for the quick intro, Lisa. For those of you that were here a few weeks ago, I'm happy to have you here again. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Claudia, and I'm an art director at Slidesgo. And what that basically means is that I prepare the briefings for our designers to get the presentations ready and done. I set the tone of the presentations and guide them through the process of designing these presentation templates that are accessible to everyone in your classrooms. So that's about it about me. And if it's okay with you, Elisa, we can get started.
Yeah, let's get started. Actually, just before I say that, if there are any questions, please use the chat feature today. This call is being recorded. The chat won't be part of the recording, I believe, but we will get to answer questions at the end. I think that's it. I think we can get started on building accessibility into educational presentations.
Okay, so to get you started, thinking about accessibility, I just wanted to ask you a rhetorical question. And it is, what would happen if hospitals were built without thinking about people with reduced mobility, visual impairment, or hearing loss? What do you think? Would these people be able to get the treatment or the care they need? For sure they wouldn't, right? Because they wouldn't be able to get to the place where they could get it, right? So I ask this because if we bring this idea to design, we should be creating these presentations or our class presentations to everyone in our classrooms. So as you may know, design is a way of visual communication that should be attractive and organized. But most importantly, everyone should be able to understand it. But what some people tend to forget is that there are hidden difficulties that are not seen, that some people even are not aware that they have them, and that make the learning process a bit harder. So what that means is that there is a gap between some people's expected abilities and their academic performance. And this generates a lot of frustration in students with these learning disorders, because they need to work twice as hard to get the same results as their peers in the class. So we're here to talk about 2 common learning disorders that I'm absolutely sure you know, which are ADHD and dyslexia. We will talk about them a little bit, just to give you a little bit of context, and then we will talk about what we can do to help these students in the classroom. So without further ado, I'm sure you know that ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and these are students that have difficulties paying attention. It sometimes seems like they are not listening to you. They talk a lot, they are very impulsive, and perhaps they start responding earlier than expected. And sometimes they even fail to complete some tasks if they require a lot of mental effort. So we've added a video here to give you a little bit of context or a visual representation of how ADHD could look, I'm just gonna hit play. Actually, I'm just gonna play it from here because it's gonna look bigger.
Oh, I think we're not getting the sound on that.
Oh, no,
Chloe.
you're not?
No.
Oh, that's bad. That's sad. What if I play it from here?
Let's try it.
How about now?
Still no.
No? Oh my
No.
goodness. What
But
can we do?
to be fair, I totally saw this work in dress rehearsal. I think it's okay. I think it's okay. I think we could probably just roll forward without the video. I think one thing that's also really important to note here is that you did a ton of research.
Yeah. And I wanted to highlight that this research, we as a team, because Carmen helped too, we did a lot of research, but we apply it to design. We're not experts on ADHD or dyslexia, as you perhaps are, you teachers, you audience. But we are happy to be here and make that connection between these learning disorders and design, and give you some tools for you to deliver presentations that adapt to everyone. So these videos were just for context, but I'm sure you're more than familiar with these concepts. So I'm just gonna leave them there so you can visit them later. But what's really important here is what we can do to help these students. So what we should be doing in our presentations is keeping decorations and ornaments very, very simple, and alternate theory slides with activities. So it's always challenging students to go back and forth and not making the lesson dense at the beginning with a lot of theory and then the activities. If you were here a few weeks back, we talked about hierarchy, and this is very, very important here. We need straightforward hierarchy to guide our students through the information in a logical way. We should be choosing simple fonts, using large texts, and the line spacing is very, very important here. No worries, I will go more into detail in further slides. A soft color palette is, I will recommend it instead of very bright color palettes. And if you were here last week, interactive activities are awesome for these students, so they can be involved in a different way with the content. So this is about I'm so sorry, I'm again. So that was about ADHD, a little bit of context on dyslexia to get into the juicy part of this webinar. Dyslexia is a reading disorder that affects language processing. So these may generate difficulty recognizing or interpreting written words, and may involve challenges in spelling, decoding, and comprehension. So again, I'm not going to be playing the video right now. You can watch it later. It is based on a TED Talk, and we've added the link, the bibliography, so you can visit it. It's very interesting. But what's important here is what we can do while designing our presentations. Again, it's very important that we choose sans serif fonts. Minimum size 16 points. We can go a bit smaller to 14, but if possible, please try to have your typography on 16. Your body text typography, the titles and subtitles should always be bigger. We should avoid all caps because they're distracting and harder to read. Again, we talked about these on the first webinar, so if you weren't here, go back and watch that because it's going to be very helpful. We should avoid italics and underlined text, and the line spacing is also very important here. Paragraphs shouldn't be very long because they are intimidating and overwhelming, so around 7 lines is a very good length for your slides, 7-line paragraphs. We should avoid, this is very important, we should avoid very, very high contrasts, such as pure black on pure white or pure white on pure black. It's better if we use very, very dark gray on very, very light gray. And again, decorations should be organized and in the margins if possible. And if you use activities that are interactive or gamified, is also better, because these students often are more interested in these kind of activities. So,
Before we move on, sans serif. I just recently learned what that means.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
we will be seeing an example of a serif versus sans serif font
Thank
in
you.
one of the slides that we will be fixing. No worries. So this is the cool part of this webinar. We will be getting a slide and we will be fixing it for someone with ADHD. So I'm just gonna quickly get out of the presentation mode so I can move things around so you can see how we can get this slide ready. So first of all, we should get started by removing some decoration that is very, very distracting. And as we talked about black on white, white on black, let's go ahead and change our background color on something more.
So we're reducing contrast right now.
We are reducing it, but we still need to have a lot of contrast so everyone is able to see it.
Got
Even
it.
people without ADHD, or perhaps we have someone with a visual impairment in the classroom. So we also need to keep in mind these students, right? So it's not black and white, but it's a very light background and darker, way darker font, right? So red. The red is very, very distracting, right? So let's go ahead and change, whoopsies, our red for perhaps a green. And then the icons, if you see them, they are very distracting because they're in different colors. So let's go ahead and change these into purple, maybe. If you download, oh, no, not here. Oh my goodness. If you download our templates, you'll see the color palette of that template here. As I'm showing you, the 10 color swatches you see first are the ones used in the template. So let's go ahead and change this one to this color. And then something that we often forget is the line spacing. So we talked about having it in 1.5 so people can have so students can have their space to read the information easily. And if we want to highlight information instead of underlining stuff, we can go ahead and put some text in bold. I'm just going to do it here in this dummy text, which are planets, but feel free to do it in your real text as much as you need. It is still important to see contrast between regular text and bold, so don't overuse it. So I've made a copy of the slide we first got. Let us just compare the difference and imagine someone sitting in the classroom. How would they feel if they get this presentation, and how would they feel if they get this one instead? This one was more calm, less overwhelming. It allows you to pay attention to the content because it's not as distracting, right?
Yeah, that's massive. And then when you're bolding the individual words, is that building hierarchy into?
Definitely. We talked about this on the first one. The main word about hierarchy, the key word is contrast, and we can achieve that in terms of font size, color, weight, and then the size of different elements and colors. But there should be always a harmony. So we talked about consistency in the previous one as well. You see how here we had icons in different colors versus here we have them all in purple. So our student can say easily the slide and say, okay, purple is icons, green is subtitles and titles, and then my body text is a darker tone of green, right? So we've prepared a checklist about ADHD that we want to share with you so you can keep it handy when designing these kind of presentations. Let me just walk you through it very quickly. These are things that we've been talking about in this entire webinar. So let's get started. The design should always be clear. We should be designing structures that are relevant to the content we are explaining. It should draw attention, but should never be chaotic. It should be clean and easy to read. The color palette should be soft, pastel, but should have contrast, right? And in this particular case, it's recommended to avoid using red because it's too distracting. The leading or line spacing, as we just did, should be set at 1.5, which is a very good line spacing for students with ADHD. Body text, again, if you can put it in 16, but if not, go ahead and put it in 14 points, but not smaller than that because it would make it harder to read. Should avoid long texts, more than 7 lines per paragraph. And if you can avoid having lots of paragraphs in one slide. If you want to highlight words or concepts, do it using bold, but not italic or underlining texts. Why, you may wonder. Italic and in the case of underlining text, make it very hard to identify the characters to everyone. So if you can use bold, please go ahead and do that instead of putting it in italics. The resources, if you remember the first webinar, the resources are the ornaments or the images we're selecting. They should be eye-catching, but they should support the content and not distract the student from the written content. And then what we just talked about earlier about alternating activities and theory slides. So now that we did this with ADHD, let's go ahead and do it with dyslexia. So these, you see here, Lisa, that you were asking before, this is a serif font for those of you who don't know. If you can see the terminals, which are the end, let me zoom in, the end parts of the letters, those are called serif. And these are harder to recognize for students in general. So if you can use a sans serif font, by all means do it, it's better. And if you can avoid using all caps, it's recommended here, in this case particularly, because we only read the first half of characters. So if we use lowercase, is easier for our students to identify the characters. Also, we should always have white space around our content. So I'm just gonna delete some stuff and work on the text to give it the importance it should have. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the underline, put it in 16 points, and add the line spacing we talked about. And if you want to highlight information, which is recommended, I would go ahead and highlight some stuff. Again, this is dummy text, but do it using bold, the bold weight. Let's just, for example, highlight this. So let's compare these results with the one that we previously had, where everything was very overwhelming and busy.
I mean, I wouldn't even say that there's something necessarily wrong with this slide. It's now like knowing that there are best practices.
Yeah.
For folks whose brains take in information differently.
Exactly. And if you can make it more visual, go ahead and do it. If you can do if you can design a diagram, you can add some slides in the middle of heavy text slides, and that would be very recommended. So they would have the chance to analyze and digest information differently in a more visual way. Something that I forgot to mention actually is that we have the templates linked here, if you want to go to the website and visit the 2 templates we are fixing on this webinar. We have them here and here. And now that we've fixed this slide, let's go ahead and read the checklist. Again, sans serif fonts over serif fonts. Text, I've put it here, 16 points, please, always. No all caps, no italics, no underlining, because it makes it hard. If you want to highlight stuff, use bold. Alternate theory with activities, and avoid using visual effects, which means adding shadows or volumes or word arts. These make it harder and distract our students. Again, paragraphs shouldn't be longer than 7 lines approximately. Hierarchy is key, always, always, always. We need good contrast. Here, it is always important to have good contrast, but here's particularly important. But we should be avoiding very high contrasts, such as black on white. And then the line spacing on 1.5 is also very, very important. So that was it for this webinar. I am so glad we got to share this information. If you want to visit the sources we visited for our research and we continuously visit, go ahead and check our bibliography. There's the video about the tech talk we talked about. I thank you so much for your time and for having me. And if there are any questions, I would be absolutely happy to answer them.
I'm so grateful, Claudia and Carmen, that you put this together and that you took what you know, your expertise, which is designing for everybody, and spent, I'm not going to say how many hours researching to know how to apply that to having folks in the classroom who learn differently. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for everything that you put into this series, these 4 webinars. If anybody here or watching the recording is interested in having these exact slides, visit the Slidesgo educator community. You can access that, well, in a link on this YouTube video or from slidesgo.com. It'll be in the top right drop down if you're looking for it. And if you find it in the community, that's where you can also add comments and ask questions to Claudia. If Claudia doesn't see it, I'll see it. I'll bug her. I'll get the answer for you. I think that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you fix a presentation you already have adapted to these criteria, please share it with us. We would absolutely love to see what you do with your slides. And if you take the checklists into consideration, we would love to see the results.
Yeah, I would freak out. I would absolutely love it. if one of these were applied and that was shared with us, I think that would make the rest of 2023. That would feel really amazing.
I would definitely be happy to see it and comment on it if you allow me.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we get to wrap up for today. If you haven't started your school year, good luck when that starts. And if you have, enjoy it. Enjoy being back. See you
Thank
later.
you, Claudia. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.